Hi, everyone, and welcome to the Repackaging Revolution. I'm your host, David Marinak. Now, before we introduce today's guest, the name of today's show is Packaging the Future, Executive Insights for Top Talent in a Niche Industry, which is packaging. Tim Gandee is an accomplished executive recruiter following a family tradition deeply rooted in the recruitment industry. His passion for recruitment was sparked during a high school work shadowing experience at his family's firm in 1996. Over the years, the company expanded into background screening services, leading to a successful acquisition in 2018. Now, after the sale, and I'm going to talk to Tim about this one, Tim embraced his creative side, touring the East Coast from New York City to Puerto Rico as the Ginger Man, performing original reggae music. During this time, he also founded a medical device company, which, again, mixing those two together is crazy, and I can't wait to hear about it, securing a patent for a Class 1 medical device. And more recently, Tim launched a new executive recruiting firm, Packaging Recruiter Pros, which leverages the latest technology and social media strategies to connect experienced professionals in the packaging industry. Tim Gandee, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I'm really excited, but before we dig into the meat and potatoes, all right, so Ginger Man,
Yes, sir.
always a reggae guy, always something that you just said, hey, you know what, this is, I'm going to go out and do my thing. I take it you were single at the time and just said, I'm going to go and, fill me in.
Absolutely. I was always tooling around with music from fourth grade on, and was making a variety of different music, bluegrass, metal, reggae, and what have you.
Yeah.
And a friend at our office decided to put our one of my reggae tunes and submit it to a contest, Rover's Morning Radio out in Cleveland.
Really? No kidding.
Yeah.
He's an Avon guy, by the way.
Exactly. Yeah. Fireworks and all,
Oh, yeah, man.
And so, long story short, I ended up winning a chance to go play on stage. But at that time, I really had no band. I was doing everything in my home studio, so I had to turn it down. And fast forward to the company being sold, Backtrack Recruiter Solutions was the company that we sold.
Yep.
And excuse me, as a part owner of the company and shareholder, the buyout was very lucrative. So I had a chance to just wander around and do something I always loved to do, which was to make music. So, 7 albums, played a bunch of concerts all throughout the, East Coast, like you said. It was a fun time, but at the same time, for a 46-year-old man, and a wife and 2 children, it really wasn't the most beneficial for family. So started to get the recruiting firm back up in business.
Good for you. And you just blipped out a second ago. Let me just see if you came back here. Can you hear me?
Okay. I can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So let me ask you a question on the whole. So were you a solo guy when you were doing the reggae music, or did you have a band that was kind of like all with you guys? How did that work?
It was a ragtag bunch of hired guns. And that's where actually the recruiting came in really well.
Yeah.
Being able to identify good talent, being able to identify good attitude. And so consequently, I had musicians that would, anytime we get a show out here in Cleveland, musicians would fly from Rincon, Puerto Rico, Asbury Park, New Jersey. And then I have a couple of laggards here. And we just make a weekend of it and just have a good old time.
I have a buddy of mine who's also a web developer here. He's got a band, and he's just like us. It's called the Skinny Moo. I don't know.
I like it.
But I know, and they just bounce around. They do Chautauqua, and they do the islands on the west side, and then and again, that's his kind of like total diversion, where he's able to kind of step out and take off the work hat, which sounds like what you were doing, and just go have some fun.
Yeah, it's a good balance. It's exciting to play original music and whatnot.
Sure.
But it is by no means lucrative.
Yeah. And for every one of those home runs that we hear of the big bands that crush it. I mean, I just saw something the other day. Who was that? Was it Eric Carmen? You remember Eric Carmen, the Cleveland guy? And he well, he had just passed, and what was interesting was they were saying his royalties were something like $800,000 a year, just on some of his. So I guess if you do make it a little bit, it can be lucrative. But for those of us that are, just doing it for fun, I guess you could say that it's not going to really bear a whole lot of financial fruit.
Yeah, the fees we get for some of the venues that we play out end up being eaten and drinking away. So
exactly. Yeah, no, I hear you, man. I hear you. Well, it's just an interesting tie-in, and I can't wait to dig into the recruiting side of things. But let's
Sure.
just touch base really fast on the background screening, because that came as an offshoot or an adder, if you will, to the family firm. Is that correct?
Absolutely, yeah. So back in '94, my father was the manager over, I think it was 3 or 4 offices of Management Recruiters International. So a
Yep.
big
Yep.
franchise firm out there.
Yep.
And his wife was also working as an executive recruiter in the office that he oversaw. And they were having deals fall apart because people were misrepresenting themselves. And she said to my dad, wouldn't it be great and really help our business if we actually knew what these people were telling us was true?
Yeah,
So
right.
he ran that idea to his company. It was a good value add-on to sell for the recruitment,
Sure.
so that the recruiter could take a more succinct approach and say, yes, this person is who they say they are.
Right.
And he took it to corporate. Corporate said the market's too saturated. You can't make any money in it.
There you go.
So he decided
an entrepreneur's favorite words is, you can't do that. Okay, I'll do it myself. There you go.
Exactly what happened. So in '94, he started up the firm, and both recruitment and in the background screening. And consequently, in 2003, we were named Inc. 500 Fast. This is before Inc. 5000.
Yeah, right.
Inc. 500 fastest growing companies in the United States, which inevitably turned into, there was a lot of consolidation going on in the market. And we had 3 offers, and one of the 3 we just couldn't turn down.
No, man, and good for you. I mean, that's the American dream right there, brother. And good for your dad and your family, and you guys. I think it's great. For our listeners, they don't. What people don't realize is Tim and I are probably about 45 minutes away from each other here in Cleveland. We're on polar opposite sides of Cleveland. But anytime we meet somebody from the Midwest, they're just really, really good, solid people. So, Tim, I'm grateful for you even taking the time to dig into this. But I can't
Very kind of you. I appreciate it.
I can't wait to learn more about your take in and I love this because I'm going to get more out of this than I think you are. And I hope you get a lot out of this because there's so much information out there being a recruiter to begin with, but focusing on the packaging industry. And if anybody has kind of listened or followed me electronically or online or whatever, I'm such a proponent of the packaging industry, whether that be as a career for somebody coming out of college, or whether that be for somebody even in transition. I just think, and I don't want to kind of go off on my tangent, but why packaging? Why was it something? Give us a little bit more insight into what drew you to packaging versus engineering or something like that.
Right. So part of it was my stepsister, who was also in the company, was running a desk focusing purely in packaging. She did a lot in the wood and pulp side, so corrugated, things of that nature. So I cut my teeth in that industry working underneath her. But what I found while working in that industry space prior to starting up my own desk was that packaging touches every industry segment. So if you have a zest for agriculture, my wife is a big homesteader. You could develop packages, whether it's BOPP bags for intermediate, transportation. If you love electronics, obviously there's custom foam packaging, hard case packaging, and so the fact that it touches every single industry segment means that it's a big enough universe for a recruiter to play in, number one.
Sure, right.
But number two, you can really get into some of the intangibles that make a good candidate.
Interesting.
You can dig into, packaging may not be their love, but boy, they're in this industry segment in automotive, and it works well for them, so they can talk turkey. It's been a great industry, and it's obviously not going away anytime soon.
Well, So let's just kind of dig into that deeper. You mentioned some intangibles, which I'm interested in, number one. And number two, I can't wait to really dig into and I totally agree with you 100% in packaging touches everybody. Packaging is a part of our world, whether we like it or not. But it seems to be, and that's why I actually have been able to really kind of embrace it, is it's not the sexiest industry in the world. It's not something that anyone's going to. It can have its high tech pieces or whatever, but
Mm-hmm.
it's critical and it's important. But it's also kind of under the radar. At least it seems in my end versus the glamorous jobs of I'm going to corporate Wall Street or I'm going to go become a lawyer or whatever. But let's talk about some of those intangibles when it comes to a packaging or being in the industry. I mean, are you talking about things like as basic as confidence? Are you talking about diligence and getting through, persistence? Give me a little idea of what you're talking about when it comes to intangibles.
I think if anything, it's the genuine interest in the subject matter at hand.
Thanks.
For instance, I helped build a team that was manufacturing bottles for the wine and spirits industry. And these two individuals that I ended up presenting and that were hired on board were living right in the heart of Napa Valley. They actually came, they didn't come from the bottle side of the business. They were coming from more just food packaging in general, flexible film packaging and barrier films. But because they were in that area and they had an affinity for wine country and the different nuances of wine, that position they already had the network in place because this company was selling to all the wineries in Napa Valley, all the wineries in the area. And when you have that sort of passion towards something, it translates into success of your job, especially in a sales capacity.
So, and I don't want to go too far down that rabbit hole, but so they came to you and they were saying, "Hey, we're in this space, meaning the wine and spirit world out here, and we want to start our own bottling agency or bottles, actual, making of blowing of bottles to make it." Can you elaborate?
Yeah, absolutely. They were manufacturing the bottles that went into just the wine packaging and spirit packaging, and their focus, their niche market was more of the small mom and pop type of operations. They weren't getting with Ernest and Gallo and things of that nature.
Right.
And because of that, they were able to get really higher margins on the end because most of the bigger, the Crowns or what have you, wouldn't even touch some of these smaller businesses.
Boy, we've got a lot in common here, brother. And that's something that I really have tried to encourage people on as well over the years is that, while it's sexy to go after Nabisco and Nestle's and that and just an example, you were talking wine. I know, was it 6 months or a year ago, it happened in the aluminum can business where the Crowns and the Balls said, "Hey, Mr. Small Craft Brewery, you either have to 10 times your orders or we're not taking them anymore."
Right. Or we're 10 times your price.
Exactly. And, and there's and part of what I try to do, and again, I don't want to go too far off my side, but what I try to do is encourage people that are in the packaging space that there are plenty of companies that will take your 50,000 piece order, custom printed. But you have to know where they're at. You have to know how to connect with them. You have to know, very much like you on your end, you have to know the candidate that would be perfect for this. That's kind of where this $64,000 question for me has always been like, goodness, where's the disconnect? Because if packaging people can carry that forward, if Ball and Crown don't give a crap about, XYZ craft brewer, well, somebody else should. Absolutely. And somebody else should really and truly look at that and go, you know what? I don't have to make 3% profit margin. I can make 13 or 20 and still make everybody happy. So anyhow, I digress, but it's just really cool to hear because what you mentioned was so critical. Higher margins often don't come from the big 900-pound gorilla. The
Right.
900-pound gorilla knows they're a 900-pound gorilla, and they're going to squeeze and push and prod. But when you can really become that trusted partner, which it sounds like you did for your client out in Napa Valley, where you become that trusted partner for them, that's suddenly a whole different ballgame. Is that a fair
Amen.
statement?
100%, because it goes beyond just matching keywords of a resume by the
Thank
HR
you.
department. Bless them. They do a great job for what they do. But at the end of the day, they might not understand the nuances that go above and beyond business development experience with X product selling to X customer.
Yeah. And so continue down that road if you could, Tim. I mean, so you've definitely kind of, is there any, because you also mentioned something which is so, and it sounds silly, but it's profound, that most of us all start in the basic commodity, corrugated boxes and bubble wrap. I think everybody in this business, whether they're a newbie or they're just whatever it is, I don't care whether they're a solo entrepreneur, we all seem that's low-lying fruit out there. And we think, well, I can sell my neighbor or my friend a case of tape or whatever. Yeah, you could probably do that. But the real money, at least I have seen, is now, of course, the big boys, the Crowns and the Goulds and some of these other guys, they can make money on billions of dollars of sales of something. But when you're talking about selling commodity items for that single person, that's, you're an order taker. You're, that's busy work. And I'm not saying don't do it, but it's certainly, my premise has always been, and I love your take, is use that to get in the door, to find out what else they use, or to find out what other opportunities are there. And that's where I think a lot of reps might be lacking in either whether it's confidence or skill or how to start those conversations. Love to hear what your take would be on that.
I mean, a lot of it has to do as far as the product knowledge, especially on the commodity ends. You're seeing a lot of cost input increases that are cutting into their margins. So at the same time, yes, those roles tend to be more of an inside sales, a gatherer, an order taker, but that leverages a lot of understanding of the customer base. It leverages a lot of understanding of just products in general, and why it's so crucial that these companies have these packaging supplies on hand. Because for the medical device that I'm working on, the packaging costs more than the device. The device is a piece of foam.
Right.
So it really it's a good training ground to give somebody the understanding of not just purely selling on price, but getting to understand how to meet that customer's needs. And you were mentioning about adding new product lines to that customer base. We're working on a retained search for one of our clients that is going to be introducing steel drums into industrial packaging. Their primary focus has been on the IBC, intermediate bulk containers.
Sure.
And they said, these customers use drums. So I can now take and knock on their door because they trust me on something on the most basic commodity level.
Correct. No, you definitely hit that. And what is interesting too, and I'm just curious, when you are looking at potential candidates, it would almost be, I mean, I'm just talking out loud here with my friend, but do you try to vet that guy or gal that you're kind of talking about, introducing to an XYZ company who's looking for a packaging rep, that skill or that ability to kind of understand that Betty the clerk is just a clerk. Even though she calls herself a buyer, she's just a clerk.
Right.
The real decision maker is beyond Betty the clerk, and you've got to be able to get past that. I'm curious if that's ever come, because I see when I got into this business 30 some years ago, the buyers held all the cards. They were the chief cook and bottle washer at the Hoover Company, and they, and then of course they had 20 different buyers that handled steel and paper or whatever. But now they're almost a dinosaur. They're, the COO or somebody in an executive suite level is the one that really, or VP of manufacturing, is handling certain types of packaging, specialized.
Right.
Whereas Betty the clerk. But just curious of your take, if if there is I would imagine confidence and the ability to kind of penetrate an account is probably got to come up at some point in that recruiting process. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a plague for all sales reps, how to get through that gatekeeper.
Yeah.
When I started the recruiting business, it was, all right, you have to build a list of who potentially you want to introduce your services to. You'll have to find out the name of that person, manually dial out 200 times to hopefully talk 3.5 hours over the course of the day. And that's just to get the search assignment. We haven't even talked about the recruiting.
You.
Right.
Yeah.
And then it moved to email blasts. Emails were king of delivery, of knocking on doors. It went beyond bringing donuts to the front clerk, to try to get that meeting.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden that has kind of gone to the wayside. There's too much noise out there. The email is for important, pertinent business at hand. Yeah. So the social media aspect has really changed how to approach any business development, whatever it may be. And the key is to, hit your point about, not the clerk. You want to go to the buyer. We always start from the top. President even, there's a lot of consternation that happens on the part of a sales rep for this case in order to talk to somebody with the big title. But they're people, and they have a need. They want it filled. And if you can fill it, whatever it may be, whether it's a widget, some foam bubble tape, or what have you, start from the top and then work your way down. And also not every prospect for any company is a good client. If you have a way of delivering your service and that company wants you to change it to the point where it's going to affect your ability to deliver, then it's not necessarily a match. We had that Progressive Insurance out here in Cleveland was a huge client of ours.
Oh yeah.
And the requirements that they had for delivering the service took us to the point of losing all margin. So we were selling high volume, but we're going to make it up on volume when you can't, when you're losing money. So, we fired this marquee company.
Sure.
Because it's business. It's nothing personal.
No.
And that's because we were dealing with the clerk. We weren't dealing with the CEO at that point.
Thank you. And that's sort of where I was going with that too, because and this isn't a knock, because I've been exactly in your shoes and we've all been there. What I'm getting at is, and props to you guys, because we all have to face the music sometimes and go, this isn't cutting it. Right. I mean, I can't afford to, just trade dollars. And then by the time I give them 30-day terms, which of course becomes 120-day terms, I'm now paying them, so it's one of those. But it's interesting. I'd love to really riff if we could, because I know you're onto something, and I'm trying to do the same from the packaging side. Okay. Is the use of social media, is the use of the newest, I don't want to say technology, but ways to interact with people, because this is where I feel there's gold. I feel there is such an opportunity to find those candidates, those diamonds in the rough, because and I try to teach our kids, which it sounds like you probably do the same thing. I really believe 9 out of 10 people in this world just want to be told what to do. But that one person who's willing to be different, willing to say, no, that doesn't sound right. I'm not going to do that. And that social media piece, or that social approach, along with other stuff, I certainly didn't hear you saying. But I'd love to hear, is that something you kind of discovered, or is that something that the reason why I ask, because from my standpoint of selling specialized and getting involved in specialized packaging, I'm like a lone ranger out here. There's not a soul out here doing this stuff. They look at me like I've got 3 heads. They're like, who is this guy? I'd love to hear, are you a lone ranger too on the recruiting side of the social, kind of using the social media?
I can't take any credit for this. The program that came into play was a gentleman by the name of Clark Wilcox, and he got through to me through social media, LinkedIn specifically.
Yeah.
and he uses an analogy that you have to fish where the fish are. So
Yeah.
I relate blind phone calls, I relate blast emails as basically taking and dropping your line in a puddle in Walmart. You know,
Yeah,
it's gonna feel like you're fishing.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, you might get a boot or some trash or something like that, but you're not going to get anything that you can take home for dinner.
Right, right. I mean, it
Yeah,
might be
yeah.
fun for the kids, you know.
Right,
Uh,
right.
but
Is
so yeah.
Yeah, go ahead. So and with so take me through that, because LinkedIn is also, is that it's such a strange platform for us.
Right.
I'd love to hear your take, because it really is. It's a unique, man. I battle with LinkedIn a lot because there are people that are looking for jobs, which great, that's in your world. There's also people that are doing a lot of self-serving. Look at me, we just opened this new factory and look how incredible we
Facebook
are.
Pro.
Oh my goodness, would
Right.
you stop this? That's not what it's for. But it's also interesting because I know we can find our people there.
Yep.
But on LinkedIn, without Navigator or some premium subscription, you're dealing with their Gmail account, and whether they come back and check LinkedIn every day or every 2 weeks, there's a big sort of, like, well, now what? And it's just, I don't know, just curious to see what your take is.
This is a great piece. I have actually talked with some of the sales and director of sales candidates that I've placed into the packaging industry, and I brought them in tune with a couple of things that are applicable that I've implemented, thanks to Clark, into the recruiting world, but it's very much transferable into any sales capacity. So, LinkedIn, if you don't have a premium account, allows you to do connection requests up to 100 a week.
Right.
Also, you can search. We tend to search the company first before we find the people, because the people, you're relying on them putting in all the applicable information about their background to be searched, etc.
Good luck with that.
Right, but the company sure as heck is going to have that in there. So you build your list by the company, and then you can cross-reference it to your C-suite, to your high-level buyer, and put that connection out. First and foremost, having your LinkedIn profile very extremely clear as far as what you do, what you can have available for them. And one of the things that I noticed, I've been doing this since '96 with a short little respite. There were changes that happened in Google and Yahoo for their emails.
Yep.
I'm sure you're familiar with it. It was, I don't know how many consultants I was paying to go, how do I fix my DNS settings? How do I get my SPIF in place?
I'm with you, brother. I'm with you.
And at the end of the day, it didn't work. But when somebody does sign up for LinkedIn, their Gmail, it's going to get through to them. It will not be marked as spam. And I always like to say that while not everybody checks their Gmail, anytime you view somebody's profile, like one of their posts, comment on it, they do get that email. And I like to say that it's a new door to knock on, basically. And I like to say it just taps into the narcissism that is social media. I don't think it's a negative thing, but
it is what it is.
Right. And so it's just the same tactics as far as business development, understanding a customer need. They all come into play, but just how do you even ring the doorbell? And that's the LinkedIn approach right now. And there's some automation tools too that can really help to, once you build that list, at least start pinging people and letting them know, hey, just so you know, I'm in this industry, connect. And then we combine that with some content. I don't know if that's how you found out us.
You know what? It's interesting. We're all, you and I are swimming in that same kind of, swimming pool, if you will. So I don't think it's any accident that we found each other from the packaging side of things, and even our geographical location. But you're really onto something that I want to expound on. If I heard you correctly, what you were saying was, when you play in the sandbox of LinkedIn, and you work with them within those confines of bobjones@gmail.com, blah, 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 that circumvents a lot of the blockers of traditional email. So so what you're saying is eventually that will, if Bob Smith looks at his email or what, that gets through, right?
Mm-hmm. Right, okay. Right, because they've already, in order to do a proper email blast now through the new, what is it, the FTC put the rules in, or was it Google? I can't recall. But you have to have them subscribe. So how does that work for prospecting? You don't know this person. How do you get them to subscribe? Right. And there's plenty of consultants that show you how to get a newsletter, to get somebody to subscribe to your newsletter. Those newsletters should be posted in brief form on LinkedIn. And a lot of it's free. I mean, you can have 100 connection requests if you don't have a premium account each week. Under a premium account, you have 200. Back in the day, it was the Wild West. You could just connect to anybody you wanted. Right. So, but going back to your point, they've already subscribed to LinkedIn emails by signing up. You have their personal email. You don't have to worry that this person left Greif Brothers and all I have is the Greif email.
The old email. Right.
So
that's a cool point. And again, I also hear you saying that that's just one part of it. Like you were saying, once you kind of do that, there's other tools and things that you use to kind of, that's your secret sauce. So I don't want you to go and divulge that. But what I'm saying is, that's a lesson for a lot of our listeners to understand. This is kind of what I was referring to, Tim. Mm-hmm. You got to be, there's no one trick pony.
No.
You got to be able to take a LinkedIn and add it to this, or maybe, refer or the TikToks and the LinkedIn and the blog post versus a video and getting, and it's there's all these moving parts. And I see, and I'd love your take on this too, because I see from the packaging side, selling specialized packaging, be in this. I think a lot of companies, and just curious if your take, I see a lot of packaging companies that are trying the old-fashioned way of doing it. They're trying to outspend. They're trying to, I'm going to throw 50 grand at this, and I'm going to get myself number one on the search engine. I'm going to blah 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 blah. Right. You know what? That worked 10 years ago, maybe, and they'll take your money now. They're not going to tell you, and they'll probably be number one on the search engine, but that doesn't mean it's going to be effective.
Yeah, there's very passive marketing,
stuff, big time. And if there's anything that I think, just curious, I think is a tremendous opportunity. I interviewed a guy last week on this podcast, and it was really interesting. He's with a company called Vocon out of Wisconsin, and what they do
is that the mergers and acquisitions?
No, this is a company which I thought was interesting too. We connected on LinkedIn, and I asked if he'd come on the podcast, and what he did, which is interesting, because a lot of packaging companies are deathly afraid of sharing, we're really good at this. This guy was just it's almost like this paranoia, like, I don't tell anybody because then I'll get competitors. And they'll go, this guy had taken over through a private equity acquisition, a company in Wisconsin that made flexible packaging. Okay, we can totally relate. But what they specialize, well, first of all, it was equipment initially way back when. Then they made some spouted pouches and things like that, but nothing really advanced. There was nothing. But what they really found out that they were better than anybody else with is they could seal different types of plastic for liquids, which kind of became this medical, back to your medical example, this became medical IV bags and medical pouches for liquids used in, blood transfusions or whatever the hell it is. But he clearly said, we discovered this is something we do better than anybody else, and we're going to run with this. So the point I'm getting at is there's just so few companies that are willing to kind of, in my opinion, that really just say, because I try to tell anybody who will listen to me, if your sales reps don't know what you're really good at, I don't care whether you're a reseller or you're Greif Brothers, if they don't know what you are really good at better than anybody else, that message gets lost. I hope you like this content. If you want more of it, I put together a specialized packaging alliance, a group of packaging professionals that are in different facets of this industry. We have webinars, we have meetings. The idea is to share information about this great industry of packaging, whether that be from the sales side of things to the marketing, even to the end users. My point with this is I'd love to have you join us, the Specialized Packaging Alliance. Check out the link below to learn more. Thanks. Right. And if you're thinking that your $50,000 ad spend on Google is somehow going to get that point across, and I just look at that as a huge opportunity for, just like you're doing in your world in the recruiting side of things, there's packaging companies that could totally benefit from going down a different path and being a, you know what I mean? Did that make sense? I know I went off on a tangent, but I'm just kind of curious.
Yeah, because otherwise, if you take the line of, we do A, B, and C. Here's what we get. Good. Yeah, it's great. Then now you're relegated from a business development standpoint of just calling people constantly going, hey, I got a box. Do you need a box? I got a box. You need a box?
I can be a penny cheaper than the other guy. I can have it. Oh, yeah, I can be right there. I'll run it over to you. And that's where you're just nothing but an order taker. I totally get it. Yeah.
But when you go, hey, by the way, we've been able to sonically weld or however it is to connect those two membranes together to the point where there's no degradation. You don't have to worry about leakage. There's no oxygen absorption. And they go, oh, God, well, I'm having that issue right now.
Correct.
So if you don't, you have to peacock. You have to show the best feathers that you have in your little tail feathers or what have you.
Have to. And I see so many big packaging companies that just keep doing things the same old way, keep throwing more people at it, keep hiring more people, hoping that somehow through just waves and waves and waves of salespeople, somebody's going to go, hey, you know what? We need, such and such. I think there's gold there for a packaging company if they wanted to look at doing things differently, getting involved with using video, getting involved with using LinkedIn with video and reports and infographics and studies and anything else. This doesn't mean you have to create it from scratch, but to be able to share and tell, which is kind of why I do this podcast too, Tim, because I believe sharing information like this, getting people on here, like I said before, I'm not looking for somebody's secret sauce. I believe when somebody controls, somebody is in charge or in the middle of the sharing of information, that person becomes that trusted source, which is really in essence why I do this. It helps me meet guys like you and kind of learn, but it also allows us to share because socially, back to your point, socially now we will have this and you will be able to share this. Hey, we were interviewed, we did this. This is gold. What you're talking about in your world is gold that goes out there, hopefully to other people or companies that need very highly qualified packaging people. And you're talking clearly about, your strategies and what you do and why it's so important to kind of get that, I just know there's gold here but getting to those decision makers at those packaging companies, probably like you deal with, getting to those decision makers when it comes to the hiring piece. They're way up there. And unless you kind of hit them in the elevator and you get to them, getting that message across is tough. I'd love your take on that because you're definitely onto something here.
Yeah, I mean the white noise that they're getting, that's why they have assistants to take and put up that blockade. And I think part of the issue you're seeing so many dynamic changes right now is we are, I believe from an economic perspective, we're in a stagflationary environment.
Thank you.
Which we haven't been in since the 70s. So
thank you.
I was still wearing diapers. No, not 78 I was born. So I was barely wearing diapers. And so that environment we're seeing a lot of companies change strategies. For instance, the biggest strategy that I've seen is the difference between companies that were selling through distribution now wanting to switch to direct. Or vice versa.
Yeah, right.
Because the margins are being compressed with the input cost compression. You have a demand slowdown that's going on there. So companies are changing their tactics of how they're going into the market But at the end of the day, I praise what we found here. We took the training, and this LinkedIn backdoor is just it's been life changing for our firm.
Yeah, and I think at the end of the day, we're kind of talking the same language, because we almost need to be able to have. There's nothing here tricky, or what it is you found a hole, you found a loophole, you found a way, in a good way, not anything illegal.
Yeah, nothing nefarious.
No, but something that clearly allows you, which is kind of why I am so excited to kind of chat with you, because part of the biggest thing, and you've discovered this, but my battle is this. I do a lot of work in the highly specialized, highly technical packaging. So it can be anything from high temperature films used for retort packaging for food. It could be to a lot of the eco-friendlier solutions where somebody wants to get away from something rigid into flexible. Getting involved in taking somebody from a bottle or jar, not to knock anybody that's in wine, but to get them into, or they want a division that has a lower cost, flexible spout or spouted pouch, or something they can take to the beach and dispose of. My point with this is that there is such a gap for quality packaging people that, and I'm just curious of your take, because I've been one of them, so I know what that means, but there's a process to being able to have a conversation. So you found the decision maker. You found the Tim Gandee who's in charge of this. Okay, great. Here we are. Now, you can't just, and this is where I see this, and I try so hard to bite my tongue. A lot of these packaging reps that are out there, whether they're solo entrepreneurs or they're working for Veritiv or Crown or whatever it is, that's not the point. They've got some very big clients that they sell commodity stuff to. And I'm over here saying, hey, by the way, the Cleveland Clinic uses a shit ton of highly specialized, sterilized or autoclave bags for their instruments. Now, they don't even know what autoclave means. They don't even know what sterilization means other than just the term. And what I'm trying to say to them is the same person that you were selling pallets and bubble wrap to is not that person who's going to handle their specialized medical packaging.
Correct.
But you can't, and not a but, and you can't sell them the same way either, Tim. You can't go there and say, well, here's my number. You got an order? Got an order? Where's the PO? This is and that's where I think, A, is an opportunity, B, such a, it's like we've become in such a hurry. And in this, we're in a microwave society. Everybody wants something quick, especially the sales reps. So when am I getting paid? You haven't sold anything yet. Okay, what's my commission? You haven't. Whoa. Okay, so I'd love your take. So back to the Cleveland Clinic example, and it's a real live example. There's lots of distributorships in and around the Cleveland area who sell the Cleveland Clinic. Everybody sells them something. Got it. But the specialized stuff takes a unique approach. You have to find the right person. You have to be able to talk to them in a certain way. You cannot go for the jugular. You can't just assume that because your price is cheaper than somebody else, you're going to get that. You got to do tests, and you got to do samples, and you need to do trials, and you need to be able to show them. And that's where I think there's a huge opportunity that it's almost like part of my question is, how do we train and teach the young people, or maybe new to the industry, to slow down, be a second string quarterback. Hold on 1 second. Don't worry. I've got a project next week with Florida's Naturals in Florida, right? And this is all tied together here. And I'm working with a reseller. It is a big sterilized bag that they use to store some of their fruit juice or something like that. But the point is that this has been a 6-month process that at the time the rep wanted to do this in about a week. And it's like, no, quoting something isn't the answer. Because we had a meeting with the buyer, and the buyer was like, all right, here's a PO. I'm like, whoa. They were just happy to find somebody else because their current supplier is totally killing them. But why would I want to take a job, Tim, that potentially you get one shot at this? I wanted to do a test, and I wanted to spec the material, and I wanted to find out what they were currently using. And we found out that what their spec said was completely different than what they thought they were paying for, which came, you see where I'm going?
Absolutely.
And yet there's this like, hurry up, microwave, I need it right now. But the real potential here is kind of what you're doing on the social side, going a different approach. I would love your take on how do we teach this to those young bucks that are coming out, or even a newbie. Slow down, walk before you run. Anyhow, I digress, but
that's great. I give this advice to candidates all the time when they go on an interview. Are you telling them things or asking them things, first and foremost? If you're asking, it does two particular points that are really crucial. One, it shows that you have a potential interest. So if from a sales perspective, selling to a potential customer for these IV bags, asking questions as opposed to telling them, hey, we got the best sealed right here. If you're just telling people, nothing's in it for them. So you can't know what's in it for them until you ask them questions. And so also with those questions, you demonstrate your knowledge about the industry. If you ask the right questions, and that's where sometimes those candidates that were selling a commodity into the market, they weren't trained on that. You look at the number of schools. I went to, it was a community college for business management, but they don't teach sales tactics. You have to be able to dig into the Zig Ziglars of the world, and find out that, because if you're talking, it's like dating. If you're talking the whole time about, well, did you see my Audi S5 and did you do this? And I'm wearing a Rolex. Did you see this? You're lost in the woods. And that's the thing that's even with the email blasts for marketing campaigns. That's where the phone calls for the marketing campaigns. You don't have a chance to ask any questions. And people love to talk about themselves. People love to talk about their company. They're there for a reason. They love to talk about their products and what problems. And if you ask a simple, good, open-ended question that's pertinent to them, you just open up the dam to find out what's really bothering that person.
Yeah, you nailed it. And I can tell why you're very successful at what you're doing. And I'm not blowing smoke at you, because this is really the essence of what we try to teach our reps as well. And, ask more questions, listen more than you talk. And underneath all of this are these hidden clues that come up if you would only listen. And the listening piece, when you find out, for example, the Florida's Naturals kind of thing, when you find out that really underneath this isn't the quality, isn't the material, it's the lead time. And they just, different story. Now, suddenly but so often when I talk to people, whether it's outreach and they're calling me back, whatever, it's like, okay, why are they looking? I don't know. Well, okay, but you need to know. No, you don't. They gave us a quote. I'm not interested in quoting. I'm interested in helping them if there's a pain point. And but you look at the volume. I get it. But you know what?
I've fallen in that trap so many times.
And I'm dealing with it now where there's, and again, the resellers who I'm connected with and trying to encourage them. Yeah, that's great, Bob. Bob, that is awesome. However, I'm not quoting it until we know why they're looking. It's a really big company, and that's why they're looking. No, that's not why they're looking. Because if they're perfectly happy with their current supplier, this isn't going out for bid. So I want to know why they're looking. And by the way, price is not the answer.
Nope.
So when you have that, get back to me. And again, this is where they go tilt and they go, oh, this guy's being unreasonable. No, it's not. That's what's missing, just like you're finding in your space. That's what's missing by being able to educate your clients or potential clients to be able to get that job and be able to kind of help them understand this is what it's going to take to be successful as a packaging rep, Mr. Candidate, or this is what they're looking for. Now, you got to understand, and I want you to understand, this is how you can do this and make big money. But if you can't, I'd rather not waste your time or mine because, you know, and again, I just know you're onto something because it's just like, and okay, so here's the $64,000 question. How do we get that across? I mean, how the hell do we get that across to get it consumed? You know, for example, you know, firing up. I mean, I could see you and I really and truly doing a role playing thing on a video, so to speak, and I'm just your candidate because part of this is, you know, I think a lot of people, especially in this day and age, people really relate to the video. People really relate to something they can watch on the phone quick. I get it. But if we don't hit them over the head with there's a way to do this and you got to do it. And if you want to sell it, or do you just want to quote it? Because some people, honest to God, and I know you know this, some people just want to quote because they can go back and say, hey, boss, look at me. I'm quoting the Cleveland Clinic.
Busy as can be.
Busy as hell. Look at me. I've got all kinds of leads. No, you don't, man. You got busy work. You're not doing anything. So, you know, that's the thing I'm excited to kind of continue to grow our friendship here because this is the same. You've got the same opportunity that I do. You've got this unique kind of really hyper-focused niche. And if you can explain it properly, the sky's the limit, dude. Sky's the limit.
You know, as you ask that question, I think back to our firm when I was starting out in the recruiting business. And all of our phone calls were recorded. You know, Ohio is a one-party consent state. You know, and so we would weekly meet, and all the senior recruiters would come say, all right, Tim, bring your little tape in, and we'd play it. And
it
was the most uncomfortable experience, but the most beneficial.
100%.
Because these guys go, well, why, you know, and they were doing the same thing that I do to my prospects. They just ask questions. Well, why'd you ask it that way? Why'd you do that? And then they would say, here's what I would do. And, you know, 20 years, and we never stopped doing that. It happened throughout until the acquisition took place. Very uncomfortable. You get very defensive. However, you learn from the pros. And, you know, I had some recruiters that at that time, you know, I'm 19 years old and they're building out $500,000. They're working. They're not sweating. They're doing a great job. And I'm going, I'll take it. Well, I didn't take it that much at 19, you know. I was like, whatever, you guys don't know what's going on.
So exactly. Right.
So as far as how to teach it, you know, that comes with identifying the right candidates to hire. And you can find out about somebody who goes into a company and is successful selling just by asking them, not, well, how big's your territory? How much did you sell? What's the geography? Actually have them walk you through. How do you prospect? What do you do? And you can hear it. You can hear it right away.
And the tension goes right there like, oh, but you find out really, really fast.
Yeah. And it's so just, you know, the same applies for all aspects. Questions, good questions, targeted, and those questions aiming at what's in it for them. There's a reason they're talking to you, whether it's they need a new pouch to launch a line of applesauce, or you know, they're not getting their products because their current supplier has supply chain issues, or they just increase their product pricing way too much. You know, sometimes price does come into play. There are a lot of companies in the packaging manufacturing world that are scrambling right now. How do you pass this on? So
well, and that, you know, and that's the other thing too, because part of what I try to also explain is there are alternatives out there in the packaging space. You have to know where to find them, and if you don't know where to find it, but there's the process that people are concerned with. Oh man, if this stuff comes from Mexico, what am I going to do? And how do you get it? Or if this stuff comes from the Philippines, or what's the process? However, if they, and this isn't a commercial for me, this is basically just saying, if you do this right and you explain this properly, you can, just like you were saying in your world, the sky's the limit. And if you explain the process, this isn't for everybody. And this isn't, let's chase this and be a penny cheaper than the other guy. This is when there's a bona fide problem. And this is when there's a bona fide situation. The customer's like, I need an alternative. I got to have a backup. And there's plenty of opportunities, sadly, in the U.S. where there's only one or two suppliers of that particular type of package.
Right.
That's it. And they've either been bought by private equity or now they only do the machinery and they don't do the film or whatever. That's a huge opportunity for some hungry lad that wants to go, or gal, to go after that and to be able to kind of long-term really create that niche and go at that and go, man, you were, and again, but part of that is, you said something that was really profound too, is having questions to ask ahead of time. I can't tell you how many times, when I was young, where I just go in, I had an appointment. I didn't spend any time prepping for that appointment. I was going in and I was going to
make a sale.
I'm just going to, this is what I do, little. And then people look at you and go like, all right, are you done? And until I started to really think, okay, hold on one second. Heckman is in the manufacturing space. Okay, what could they possibly use? Who would be their competitors? Maybe Stand Up Screw, or maybe this company over here that I work with. And maybe they use this netting to protect these machine parts or whatever it is. Right. Suddenly, my conversations went much deeper. Suddenly, I was able to kind of have a much, a friendlier conversation because I wasn't just that guy, just blah, 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 blah. And I just find that that's a lost art too. And you nailed that as well, as being able to really, even listening to the phone conversation that made my skin crawl.
A lot of sweating in that room.
Dude, but that's the greatest way. Talk about learning from somebody that's making $100 grand, $200 grand, and you're barely making 15 grand a year. And you get that kind of advice and you can take it properly, that this guy isn't criticizing you, making you look like an idiot. He's actually trying to help you, or she's trying to help you. That to me is just, man, that's a lost art, brother.
And it actually goes to your point that we brought up as we started the conversation about, selling to the clerk. If you can ask a technically astute enough question to that person that can prove that they don't know what they're looking for, and they say, well, I got to take this up to who? Okay, who's that? Yeah. Let's bring him in on the conversation. Right. I have a bunch more questions like this.
Yeah.
And now you have your hiring manager, or not hiring manager, sorry, that's my word.
Yeah.
You have your purchasing manager or what have you sitting there in the ditches with you. They're deep in it.
Yeah, and there's and again, to that point, you're spot on. And when it works like that, it's golden. But when it doesn't, and that particular clerk goes, well, give me all your questions, Tim, and I'll go ask that person, and I'll get back to you with that. Like,
I just go around them. I
know, brother. I know.
Person is.
I'm sorry, Betty. This isn't going to work. And
we're not for everyone.
No, it's just not going to work. Oh man, I could talk to you for hours. This hour just blew by. So let's land.
I'd love to do it again,
dude. 100%. Not only do it again, but let's kind of go back and because what you're doing is really helping a lot of people. The beauty of the podcast here is not just the overall podcast that we share with listeners, but we break it into, you've had some really, really brilliant little snips. Those snips to me are what just as important as the overall interview. And, the way you've been able to kind of equate the recruiting side of things with just even packaging sales is so fresh and such a breath of fresh air that's out there. I know people are going to really resonate with this. And it's just, and that's why I just know that there's there's a need for packaging, like we talked at the very beginning. It fits us. We're a couple of regular guys out here. Yeah. Although I can't sing at all.
Neither can I.
Yeah,
that's reggae.
Attaboy. But no, I mean, it just, and this is where it just, packaging is under the radar. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's a
Yep.
great thing. There's a ton of money to be made out here.
Oh yeah.
And the money that repeats too, because if you can get into that specialized packaging side and you can become their trusted partner and you can handle and make sure they never run out, you are number one on the list, man. That's it. And
you
you
have
are
a friend and a client for life.
Big time. And I just see so many people that miss out on that because we're in such a hurry, or we're so desperate. Oh my God, they're going to cut me. They're going to cut me. They're going to cut me. And I
Desperation's a tough one.
Oh, it is, man, especially in this whatever economy you call it.
Yeah.
And I get these panic calls, Tim, from people that have been in the industry. They took the company car in the 60 grand a year. And 20 years ago, hey, God bless you. That was probably a good move for you in your world. But now they're being let go. Or now they're saying, you know what? No longer salary, it's a draw. And that draw has to be offset. And by the way, good luck. Starts tomorrow. Whoa. You know, and you've got these panic calls from guys and gals in their late 40s, 50s going like, what do I do? This is all I know. And it's like, you know what? You're going to have to do something different, Sam. We're going to have to look at this differently.
So content in farming, right?
Exactly.
Usually what drives that one is, there's a good money to be made in the residual customer base because of consumable nature can keep you going. And it's so easy to turn into a farmer with a piece of straw in the mouth and rocking on the front porch,
Exactly.
It's comfortable.
It is comfortable. Well, brother, let's land the plane. So let's make sure that everybody understands how to contact you.
Sure.
And I've got here, but we'll also put it on the screen. But I just wanted to make sure that we've got this covered. It's packaging reps.com.
Packaging Recruiter Pros. But I have 3 different website addresses because I did do some search engine optimization, and packagingjob.com is the best. It's Tim at packagingjob.com. Obviously, I'm on LinkedIn, and so you can always connect with me there. I'll take most connections. There's a couple weird ones that I've been watching. There's some spam out there, so I'm sure it's going to crack down.
100%. Somehow that I'm with you, and I'll make sure when we're done here. That was just for the recording, but I'll make sure that when this plays, we have everything on the screen and shared, and it'll be the proper 440 number and all that kind of stuff. Get a hold of it.
And David, I'd like to also show you too some of the automation tools at some point when you have a moment. I'll show you some of the automation tools. I'm not sure what your Salesforce size is like, but if we want to keep it off of the recording portion of it, there's a thing called Dripify that really allows for once you target out that target list of whomever it is that you want to talk to, Dripify has a sequence program that really takes and taps into the narcissism. So just to give you a quick example, and I don't know if you have time.
Yeah, go ahead, fire away. I use something called Woodpecker. Is that similar?
I'm not sure.
Okay, go ahead.
So
No, fire away. That's great.
I take my lead list. I do have Sales Navigator because I have the 200, and I'll do a connection request with no message, just a connection request. You could do 200 of those. That usually pushes somebody to take a look at your profile. So you'll see profile views that start popping up.
I got it.
And that point, if somebody accepts your request, you can have your first message go out to them, say, hey, in my case, I was looking at your background. We're working with the client. I don't know what your situation is, but I'd love to learn more about you. And boom, that calls. And then if they don't accept the connection request, it'll tap into that narcissism by liking one of their posts automatically for you 2 days later. You want to follow them now and make sure they're in your feed, go ahead and follow them now. If there's a couple of different things that just keep poking them, going, hey, by the way, I asked you to connect with me. Why don't we connect?
Yeah.
And
interesting.
It works out to be, a good campaign works out to be about 38% of the connection requests that go out result in a conversation. As opposed to the days of cold calling and email. If you got 5%, it was great. It was volume over quantity over quality.
Yeah, right. Is
So, yeah.
is that so? Dripify is that
Mhm.
so? That's a separate piece of software that you use.
Yeah, it's $100
Okay.
a month, and so I use the sales. Yeah, exactly. So I use
Yeah.
the Sales Navigator to build my list of prospects that I want
Yeah.
to talk to. I import that list into there, create a sequence, set that sequence off, and then it's like fishing with dynamite. I'm just waiting for the
Yeah.
fish to come up because I already, why, like in the recruiting business, so often people think you're trying to convince people to take another job. No, I'm not.
I know. No,
Yeah.
exactly.
So
Well,
you want to get the
I
people that
love
raise
that.
their hand.
Well, and what I shared with you the other day is another thing that I found called the Score app, and again, that approach was, it's kind of gamifying. It sounds cheesy, but people, if I sent, if somebody sends me a survey, I cringe. I mean, unless there's
Hmm.
$100 gift card that says fill this out, I cringe. So I'm not interested. But if somebody says something that, the specialized packaging or the profit or the packaging profit accelerator, which is, and what this Score app did, and it's just nothing more than a couple of key questions along the lines of, do you know what even the, do you even know what the term specialized packaging means, or do you know that there are, it's meant to just get these guys thinking. Now, these can be dropped through LinkedIn, and
Hmm.
I'll keep. You work with me, I work with you, brother. These kind of
Yeah.
things are gold for us. But the point is all I'm trying to do is get the conversation going with somebody.
Exactly.
I find people in the packaging space, Tim, are very good at connecting, but taking the next step, they're like, unless you poke them and poke
That's where
and poke.
that's where the content comes up.
I
So
agree.
now this person is following you and putting together clear, succinct, specifically formatted, and putting out information. What's in it for them?
Yeah.
Now that's the soft handshake.
Yeah. Yeah.
Instead of you just calling them again, why is Tim
Yeah.
calling me? He just talked to me last month,
Yeah. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
no, they're reading. What are you seeing in the packaging industry, Tim? And I list it out in brief form, and so that's the handshake.
Yeah.
That's the donuts to the clerk approach.
Yeah, and I love that because that's kind of goes back to my original, and that's you're one of those guys, Tim, that I want to make sure that somebody's going to ask me, what is the new way to be able to kind of advertise sounds wrong, to be able to kind
Right.
of sell packaging, if you will. And frankly, I would not, I'm such a proponent of Gary Vaynerchuk and some of these other guys out
Yes.
there that talk a lot about this isn't a Super Bowl ad. We're not talking about going out, but what we're talking about is doing things using new technology. And what you're describing is right there. My
Hmm.
point with this is that you'd be one of the first calls I would want to bring in because I've had people go like, what you're talking about is interesting. And how do I go about doing that? Well, it's a whole different approach. Doing
Hmm.
video on YouTube and making sure it's connected on, your LinkedIn and making sure you've got this Dripify or whatever it is. This is a new way of doing this.
Right.
And again, not only is it a new way, it's way more effective than just, blasting and spending 50 grand on AdWords. But the other part of this is that it's in the language that the young people are working with right now. You
Exactly.
know what I mean? And that's what I
Exactly.
love about it.
You got to break their habit of showing, look, I got a puppy. Nobody gives a shit about your puppy.
Nobody cares.
Right.
I'm so sick. Look at what we've celebrated 30 years in business. Well, good for you.
Yeah. What's in it for me?
What's in it for me? Exactly. And
But Clark is the guy that taught me this. It just changed the entire landscape. I even tried blast texting people, and T-Mobile, we had like 4 phone banks set up, and T-Mobile would spam me out constantly.
I know, man. And there's, it's so seductive because I've fallen for that too. Part of my pitch is anybody who will listen is save yourself the $100 grand that I've spent chasing all this shit. Okay? Because I've chased it. And I had a guy that swore that we could do an AI TikTok campaign with a bank of computer terminals that was going to suddenly, and I'm like, what am I doing?
There's no fish. There's no packaging fish in that TikTok.
What am I doing? I know. Right. And it's like, I'm not, no, this doesn't work for me. What am I doing? And there's so much, but the seductive and we all want to grow and the economy's tight and we've got customers that go, and it's just like, yeah, it's so seductive to go down that road. But you know what? Nuts and bolts, blocking and tackling, yeah, use technology if that's where they're swimming. Like you said at the beginning of LinkedIn, that's where they're swimming. Don't go to the TikToks of the world. Maybe shorts if you can find the right people. But
I mean, there are industries that work. That works 100%. In some industries,
but not packaging. Specialized, especially, yeah. I mean, we're not selling real estate, and we're not selling, cosmetics, and there's no Kardashian here that's going to be peddling packaging. So it's like, why bother? You know what I mean?
Exactly. And you don't need everybody, like you said about the Super Bowl ad. You don't need 30 million views. You need 20 interactions with it, so somebody knows that you're even out here in this wilderness of noise. This is such a great way to let's do this again, first of all. Okay, absolutely.
What you said also, which is so cool, is that's the biggest thing that people miss out on is they want 1,000 leads when 10 will do it. 10 will take your business and quadruple it.
Quality.
10 quality leads will do that. But if you're getting 1,000 of no. And it just, God, it's crazy, dude.
I agree. Absolutely.
This was fun for me, brother. And
likewise.
And you know what? I would have invited you to George's famous dinner bell, but they closed George's. Remember that?
Oh, they had the ponies and the donkeys.
Oh, he was such a crazy. He was a loon, man. I loved that guy. He
was an authority at every chance he got.
And they just kind of kept. And I heard he passed. But I mean, for our listeners, we would go out to George's, and it was one of these little. It wasn't a diner; it's a restaurant.
Yeah, an old house.
Exactly. And his portions were like monumental.
And inexpensive and good.
You get soup and it's overflowing with homemade noodles. And it's like, this is heaven. And George was this crazy. I think he was Greek or Mediterranean or whatever it was. And George was always fighting the city about his parking. But he owned the land, and he finally he got sick and tired and just retired or whatever. Bless his heart. But that was such a great
gas station now. It's a gas station.
Do they still have is Bill's the Bill's Pickle Bill's still
Pickle Bill's is still running. They they always have plans for the new build after it burns down though. So
I know exactly. We used to travel
locality here.
Tim, we used to travel out here when I first moved to Cleveland in the 80s. We'd travel out there because it was all you can eat crab legs. And there was nobody that had any, no one even talked like that. It was heresy. And people were taking crab legs and sticking them in their purses and stuff to walk out there. And it was like, now I look back going like, oh God, what was I doing? But
good stuff.
Yeah, brother. Yeah. All right, Tim, we're going to get together and break some bread here soon, but let's definitely, I will get you the copy here, and we will kind of slice and dice this and make sure everybody knows how they can reach you. And dude, this is a thrill for us.
Beautiful. Absolute pleasure. I'm glad we met here and definitely want to meet up again.
You got it, brother. Hi, everyone. It's David Marinak. I hope you enjoyed that episode. If you want to see more, here's another video that you can check out, and I hope you enjoy it. Thanks.